My math showed 57 there. 59. Check it out. Check it. So we are live, and today is a Thursday. It's a rainy Thursday here in Michigan, 49 degrees F. So I told you we'd do a live stream on Tuesday and Thursday this week, and today is Thursday. So there you go. Glad to see everyone checking in. Johnny Knoxville always shows up early and likes to warm up the room for me. Appreciate that, Johnny. Robert Penzick checking in. 90 knots, yes. Presumably to something above, but thanks for checking in. I like to see the familiar names and faces. MHO8, likewise in the room. Betty Anderson, hi Steve, hi Betty. Andrew Allen, don't make me turn his car around. And you also don't want to sit one arm's length behind the driver if you're in a station wagon, because the driver can always reach back and discipline while driving with the other hand. You got to be careful. David Owens checking in from Royal Oak, Michigan, one of my favorite towns. Worked in Royal Oak for quite some time. Jim Garect, hey Steve from Beverly Hills, California. Jim, how you doing? I've talked to you before. I believe you bought some of my books. I appreciate that. Dylan asks, is there a Viper announcement? Well, that's not the big announcement, but since somebody guessed, I think I have to let you know I did place a down payment on a car today. That's it. I don't like to talk too much about stuff before it happens for fear I'll jinx it. Leslie Gala, hey Steve, you're my favorite chuckling lawyer. Love from Royal Oak. I assume you mean chuckling as opposed to chucking lawyer. Unless you hire lawyers who can chuck things. Throw cases out maybe, I don't know. Carl Skaggs, Modesto, California says hi. Hello from Washington, D.C. area from Danny Burris. Thank you very much. Kevin Myers, busy as a bee, Sweden, Maine. Is Sweden a town in Maine? Or do you hail from both places, Sweden, the country, and Maine, the state? Norma Hogarth, morning, everyone from Colorado. And Sandy McGinnis Duran, likewise in Colorado. We got two Coloradoans in the house. Downhill for life. Greetings from New York City. Thank you for checking in. Dan C. from Seattle. And turning at is the down payment the announcement? No, that was it's one of those things I was going to mention simply if it came up. David Owens, did you buy a Daewoo Lanos? No, the day I buy a Daewoo Lanos, unless I'm doing it ironically, I want someone to file papers to have me declared criminally insane, and I do mean criminally insane. Ron Meisner, North Fort Myers, Florida, send rain. Well, we got rain right now. So Joel Kirshenman beats Johnny to the forecast of Bad Axe, Michigan, where it is in fact rainy and 47 degrees, which is pretty much what I've got right now, which is I'm south there, a couple counties down. So Robert Hodgins, hello from Hamilton, Ontario. I believe Hamilton, Ontario is where we've got all the speeders on the QEW in that area, that neck of the woods, we say. Michael Bullington from Lubbock, Texas. Hello. Richard Burke, Long Beach, New York says hi. I appreciate that. Robert Penzick says don't knock the Pintos. We're not knocking them today. We've talked about them before, though. Chevy Mustang, rainy and chilly in Bay City. Yeah, you got the same thing I've got. Bay City is up here on Saginaw Bay, and it's not far from me. Anthony Prime, hi from the UK. Need to know, sharpish Steve, I have my Portuguese class the top of the hour. Oh, I got you. I see what you're saying. You're saying you need to make the announcement now rather than at the top of the hour, because at the top of the hour you got to go someplace. Here's what I'll do. I'll tell you the announcement and I'll mention it again later on for people who join live. But I think more people actually watch these in reruns. But this is the last live stream you're going to see from this studio. Now, I'm going to another studio. The studio I'm going to is a better, bigger studio. And I will bring my stuff with me. And I was actually toying with the idea of not even telling anybody, because I could have pulled it off without anybody noticing, except for the wall is going to change colors. So unfortunately, I could have repainted the wall in the new studio to match this wall. That seemed like an awful lot of work. So instead, The next time I do a live stream and a video, probably a day or two down the road, you're going to see the background change dramatically, meaning that the wall back there will change and the bookcase will be there. The other bookcases will be there. All of my knickknacks will be there. But since to move everything, I've got to dismantle it and move it and then remantle it, as we say, with a word I just made up, I'm going to actually go through and fine tune some of this stuff. So I might finally have the chance to use the saber rack for the 3 sabers I've got. I would also like room for all of the bumper stickers because I've got so many bumper stickers that I'd like to put up on display, but I don't have room for them here. So I'm going to try to get as much of this stuff up. I've got some dead space right there I could use, some dead space right there I could use. But again, I want to get everything onto within frame. So the big announcement is I am going to be moving from this studio to a larger studio shortly. So I'm hoping that will up the game a little bit. You never know. JP says that I could rotate the bumper stickers. I could, but I'd like to put them all on screen because they're all significant radio stations. Will the Obey Giant face make a reappearance? Hey, Dodge Viper, what do you know? Hang on. I like to be responsive to people who ask me questions. So there's the Obey Giant and K-Rock sticker will be leaned against the Viper. Just for now. Okay. So there's the Obey Giant sticker, the Shepherd Ferry artwork. Here is the Dodge Zippo that someone sent me. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And it fits standing up. Cool. I never knew that. But like I said, I'm going to disassemble this whole rigmarole, box it, move it, and then reassemble it. And I'm hoping that the camera, the microphone, all this stuff, the general dimensions won't be that hard to recreate. So Thornelius says, do we get a video tour of the new studio? Yes. In fact, I promise you we'll do that. And I'll tell you why. People have said, why don't we get a tour of this studio? If you saw what was right here, it looks like a bomb went off because I just literally just pushed. I have something, I drop it on the floor, I pile it up, and somebody would call, public services on me and say, hey, this guy needs help. He's hoarding. And I got another pile of stuff over here, literally because this is a workspace and I work and I figure, I keep telling myself I'll take care of this someday. Well, some days now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do that. Mike M., are you moving from one bedroom to another? No, I am actually going to a different building. Okay. I wouldn't dismantle this just to move it to another room. That'd be too much work for too short of a move. Scott Hayden, hello from Louisiana. Thanks for checking in. But yeah, Thornelius, remind me if I forget. I'll give you guys a tour of the new studio because it is more of a purpose-built place and it's got more room. I don't know what the dimensions of this room are, but the studio I'm going to is substantially larger. TK Mills, wife kicking you out. The good news is I haven't got a wife who can kick me out. So there you go. Richard R., take a photo before you move anything. I could do that, but I'm worried you'll think less of me. You see how I work. DePaul 31, good afternoon from Staten Island, New York, 65F and sunny. Wow. You guys have got the good weather. Toby Gray, are you going to the garden shed? That's actually not a bad way of looking at it. I'll fill in more details later. The interesting thing is that, I think in England, they often call garages sheds. They'll say, like, I'm going out the shed, and it's actually the garage. But it's not quite a garage, but, it's a move. It's a move. Zach Bauer, can you get out in case of a fire? Yeah, if I had to, I mean, the door's right there, and there's a window right there. I can jump out that window if I had to. It's a ground level window, so it's not that far of a drop. Danny Reed, will the acoustics change due to less stuff? No, the room I'm going to has better acoustics. The space I'm moving to is an actual studio built for studio purposes, and I'll tell you more about that. So, TK Mills is moving as a communist plot. It could be, or it could be a plot of the deep state, or possibly the Illuminati. Because remember, I may have joined the Illuminati recently, and maybe the Illuminati said, Steve, now that you're a member of us, why don't you just move out of this little hovel of yours and we'll put you into a nice new studio. That's what we do we take care of our people. So Daniel Kester, what color Gatorade? Now I bought a whole pallet of the red stuff. So I'll be drinking red stuff for a while. Wayne Skase. What did I miss? I'm moving my studio. So shortly you're going to see me in a different studio. So I was toying with the idea about just pretending it didn't happen. But yeah, and of course, AJ Thompson says it could be Big Pizza. Big Pizza could be a behind the move. Because remember, you got the government, right? Then you've got the deep state. Then you've got the Illuminati. And then you've got Big Pizza. And they've got their tentacles in everything. So there's somebody in Big Pizza who decreed that Steve Leto guy needs to move his studio to a different place. My views, will you have a theme song like Sanford and Son? I toyed with the idea about getting an opening theme, but I thought, I got enough grief about the 3 seconds I make you watch with the title. Zach Bauer, does Big Pizza run the Illuminati or the other way around? Depends on who you ask. 90 knots, how far of a drive to your new studio? From here or from where I'll be living at the time? Oh, Stoner 0046. Will we still be able to play the game Find the $100 Bill? Yes. And in fact, I'm trying to remember where I put it now. If somebody knows, tell me. It's back there somewhere. I'm sure it is. But yes, no, the $100 bill will go with me, of course. Hauptmann 6, are you retiring to the Upper Peninsula? No, I'm not. I don't plan on retiring at all. But yeah, and Hauptmann reminds me where the 100 is. But I'm not retiring, and I'm not getting a place up north. It'll be a while before I can do that, but someday I'd like to. Bart Omand got here late. You moving? I'm moving the studio. The studio is moving. So All Texan suggests the Viper is involved, but that's not true, I don't think. The K-Rock sticker is in front of the Viper. But yeah, South Maryland Steve says it's a new Illuminati propaganda setup. Yeah, of course. And by the way, in case you haven't figured this out, my entire existence on this channel is just to put out subtle messages in support of the Illuminati. And occasionally I come right up and embrace some of their nonsense, like, the globe, Earth, that kind of thing. But other times it's very subtle. It's very subtle. So Anthony Vollmer, Michigan should pay for your move from the proceeds of civil asset forfeiture. They need to move me to a much, much more expensive place then. Dixie Champagne says, high and tight. Hadn't seen the back of the toupee since you got it cut. I didn't realize how short it was back there either. But yeah, it is rather short back there. Coronash 69, greetings from Coldwater, the pulse of Michigan. Coldwater is down here towards the state line. And it's a neat little town. I've been down there before. A lot of history down that way, because most of the people who came to Michigan came in through Detroit and either traveled west or out, but there was more traffic along the bottom for a while. People traveling to Chicago and back. I think old is it US? Well, I know it's 94 now, but the one across the bottom, I think US 12 is it? But the old one. So Coldwater, it's gonna drive me crazy. I gotta look it up. Hang on. Forgot which map which thing I'm looking for here. Okay, so yeah, US 12. Wow. You yanked that out of thin air. But yeah, it's a neat town down there. Tom Lavault, hello from Alto, Michigan, Southeast Grand Rapids area. Thank you for checking in. Yeah, that's one I was not that familiar with until you told me that. John Mirbox checks in with his whole slew of emojis, which he often does in the videos. I recognize the slew. Thank you very much. Bruce Napier says, Matt Helm says it's the phone company, not the Illuminati. Well, the phone company and the utility companies obviously are entities unto themselves, and they behave like they're deities. Mike Bennett says, take a photo of the present background and use a green screen to occasionally put your old studio background in your new studio. Keep people guessing. I've had several people say, Steve, why don't you just do that? Just one good photograph of the background and green screen it in. But I have too much fun moving stuff around, moving dollar bills around, and that kind of stuff. What happened to the cool acrylic desk wedge? Are we referring to this? The Steve Leto attorney at law? It simply got moved because I added a microphone to the set a couple days ago. So if that's what you're looking for. Scott Hayden, hello from Flint, Michigan. Hello, sir. I worked in Flint on and off several times. Ian Halujak says, hey, Steve, checking in from central New Jersey where it's 70 degrees. Ray Bustabody, Ray from a rainy Laytonville, California. I'm not sure if I've heard of Laytonville. I've heard of Watsonville, but not Laytonville. Probably nowhere near each other. Granny Squared, hello from Wolverine Lake, Michigan. Wolverine Lake. I bet we have a bunch of those. Joshua Day, afternoon from Lansing, Michigan, where I guess there's another rally on the steps of the Capitol building, but because of the rain, it was not as well attended as the last one. Nico Pesla points out we got 526 people in the room. Thank you very much. We've got 527 right now. Andrew, hey, Steve, the Illuminati is not a frivolous subject. No, that's why I joined them. Tom Holt, nice Puddles shirt. Yeah, this is a shirt for Puddles the Clown. If you don't know who he is, we've talked about him before, but he's a wonderful performer, and he's a pretty cool guy. Tiger Stripes, hey, Chad, have I missed the big announcement? The big announcement is that I'm moving studios. The studio will look a lot like this. It'll have the same stuff behind me, but I'm going to be in a bigger space with better acoustics. So this is the last live stream you're going to see from this physical space. And by the way, I might not be able to do a live stream on Sunday. So there might be one missing, for which I apologize. But it's going to be a matter of how something gets stuff hooked up. So I can shoot videos, but I don't know if I can do a live stream. Technical issues. So we're working on that. Daniel Probert, how many T-shirts do you own? Several hundred, possibly 300, maybe 400. Robert Cunningham. So is your new studio going to be close to the Atlas Mill Pond? Yeah, it's going to be powered by a water wheel at the Atlas Mill Pond. No. Atlas is where I've got my post office box for mail from my channel. And in fact, I went by there today to check my mail. And it's a neat little town. There's nothing there anymore, but there is a post office. It's a tiny little post office. And there's one business next door to the post office that sells, I think, plumbing supplies. And then a bunch of houses. And you can see there's a big building that's been there like 150 years that used to be, I don't know, a school or a church or something. And then around the corner is a house that I think used to be a gas station. It's got one of those weird awnings with the pillars, but it's abandoned now, I think. And then there's houses, and then there's a road that kind of goes off, and it goes down a really steep hill right out of town. And there's a river there that is actually the exit from the Atlas Mill Pond. And I suspect that back in the day, there was a mill there. There's a big building next to where the outlet is, and there is a dam that forms that pond. And I'm familiar with it. I've biked by it, run by it, and driven by it many, many, many times. But yeah, the Atlas Mill Pond, right around the corner from my P.O. Box 168. David Alley, hi from Marquette. Is that Michigan? Tommy, is it true that the word insurance is forbidden at trial? It depends on the context. It's quite common that they will say you cannot tell the jury that there is or is not insurance on something because they're worried that a jury might say, oh, there's insurance that covers this. It's not real money. And so an insurance company doesn't have to pay a claim simply because they've got the money. They should only have to pay the claim if a jury actually determines all of the reasons for the basis of the claim. So it's not uncommon that there's a car accident and someone's getting sued and the insurance company steps in to defend them. There's an attorney there who says, I'm here on behalf of defendant. They don't say I'm here on behalf of Allstate or State Farm. They just, we're here on their behalf. And it's not uncommon that they'll say you don't mention that to the jury because it's one thing to spend $1 million of someone else's money, but it doesn't feel as bad if it's an insurance company's money. So at least that's the thinking. That will, of course, vary wildly from state to state. Doug Jones, no Sunday Live. Do we get a refund or replacement on a later date? You get what you pay for, my friend. Full refund. I'll as soon as I get it working, I'll do one just to announce I'm back on. Johnny Knoxville, so are you going to drive to Wisconsin now so you can legally buy flags and seats and child safety seats, I assume? The greatest thing ever was when they announced that the Wisconsin Supreme Court had ruled. They sent, the news organizations ran to the bars and got pictures of people holding up beer like, woo, you can finally drink, as if the people of Wisconsin need a better excuse. But David Hastings, hello. Sunny and 80 in Paducah, Kentucky. There you go. Paul Reynolds, hello from Great Keppel Island, Australia. Never heard of it. The only island I know of in Australia, of course, is Tasmania. That's a very, very large island. Nico Pesla, yeah, Big Pizza will take care of the refunds. Yeah, exactly. You can't take Big Pizza. You tell them what you want. Ray Bustabody says, is it Bustabade? Is that what you're saying? It's not Bustabody? I apologize, Bustabade. David Perazzi says, make sure you take the microphone collection. The Illuminati has them all tapped. And I wouldn't be surprised if each one goes to a different country or different language. So, for instance, the Illuminati from France might be on that one, but the Illuminati from Canada might be on that one. I would assume, Paul Ryder, my daughter did her study abroad in Tasmania. I actually know somebody who had an exchange student in America from Tasmania, which, it sounds much more exotic than saying Australia. But of course, in America, we just know of the Tasmanian devil as a cartoon character. So, A Believer, hi, Steve. Do you own any muscle cars that you drive on a daily basis? Not at the moment. I laugh because that could change at any time. Scott Wojo, what's the big announcement? The big announcement is I'm moving studios. So next time I do a live feed, I'll be in a different studio. I did shoot a couple of videos in advance, so you'll see the current background one or two more times, and then it'll change studios. So Dean Prather, hello, Steve. Good morning from Bellingham, Washington. Robert Hart, I was in Tasmania 1 year ago today, and here I am locked down, having had 3 international trips to 3 continents canceled. Wow, that's a lot of traveling. Daniel Kester, what has been the participation of Detroit in the War of 1812? I believe that may have been the war where there was a fort in Detroit. I think the English actually occupied it at one point in time. It's been a while since I looked at that. Nancy Parker will be moving from the main level to the basement. Better acoustics. No, both studios are above ground. It's actually the other studio I'm going to is larger and has a better ceiling. The ceiling I've got right here has got acoustic tiles, but the studio I'm going to is a much you'll see it's a much cooler studio. Golden Mare, why are you moving? Just going to a better studio. Going to a better place. Thulu ate my toast 202. Can you make another video about the Baldy Frog? I did one video on the Baldy Frog, and it's funny because Mark Lieberman, my friend who owns it, he owns a company called Nostalgic Motoring, which is that license plate right there. It's in Auburn Hills. He's a car broker and also a car dealer. And he deals in high-end collector cars, sports cars, and just exotic and some strange stuff. And the Baldy Frog is a car about the size of a shopping cart, made by an Italian company. And he bought one, and he called me, goes, dude, you got to see this car. So I went over to his place, and I brought my cameras, and we shot some video riding around in the Baldy Frog. And he and I are both over 6 feet tall. So these two big guys in this little car, with a good tailwind, it'll do like 45 miles an hour, maybe 50. And you're scared at that speed because it handles like a shopping cart. It's tiny. And, the door panels are literally just a piece of fiberglass and a lever. I mean, I'm joking to some extent, but it's chintzy. And so I put that video up, and shortly thereafter, Mark called me and goes, Steve, guess what? I just bought another one. And I go, you're kidding me. He goes, no. He goes, I couldn't pass it up. So he's got two of them parked next to each other. They take up like, this much space because they're so small. And they're just in the corner of his building, He's got two Baldy Frogs. Michael Goodwin, are you going to bring all your T-shirts to the new studio? Oh, no, of course I'm bringing them. He says, if you move them, can we get a shot? Yeah, I can probably do that. In fact, I'll probably, because I've mentioned this before, I've got a room next door here that's my T-shirt room. And I've got two big rolling racks filled with T-shirts in there. And so I will probably put those either in the studio or right next to the studio, and they'll all be there. So it'll be a much more picturesque shot. Let's put it that way. So I maybe I'll do that. Danny Bupri says, yeah, shopping cart with a Briggs. That's pretty much it. So, Ed Libator says only a runner would have a T-shirt room. That's true. I do have a whole collection of race shirts, and I will once in a while wear one on camera just for the fun of it, but I don't wear them very often. But I do. I've got every race I've run, I've got a T-shirt for, and I like the new ones because they give you tech shirts. In the old days, they give you cotton shirts, So, Gross from Alex is Puddles rules, and somebody else mentioned Puddles also wearing the Puddles a Clown T-shirt. One of my heroes. Scott Whirling, is it legal to have non-coffee products in a coffee cup? Yes. If you own the cup, it is. You put tea in there. It could be a teacup for all you know. Dan Johnson, any cool stories of meeting any musicians from your days in radio? I've met a couple musicians in my life, although quite frankly, I didn't meet them because of radio. I never worked at any stations that were big enough to have major people in the studio. In that format, but I met the guys from Def Leppard backstage at a concert. I guess that was at a radio station, and I've put that picture up on screen before, where it's me and a bunch of people from the station and two of the guys from Def Leppard, the drummer and one of the guitar players. I've also met Alice Cooper, but I met him at a bar in New York. We just recognized him, and I went over and talked to him for a little while. Nice guy. And I've also been backstage at a Van Halen concert where I exchanged about one syllable with both Eddie and David Lee Roth back in the David Lee Roth days, because each of them walked by and I said, hey, and they both turned and looked, and Eddie looked longer before deciding not to respond, and David Lee Roth only kind of partially turned his head and just kept walking. So I'm trying to think who else I've met. Long ago, I met Flo and Eddie, the two guys from the Turtles. And I also met Ronnie from Ronnie and the Daytonas, little GTO. I'm trying to think, is that? Oh, and I've also met Jan and Dean. I met them, but these are oldies guys I met back when I worked at an oldies station. And half the audience is going, who? So that, yeah, Dan, that's the only musicians I can think of that I've met that anybody would recognize. So, Richard Burke says Bed Bath & Beyond has hangers that won't leave bumps in the shoulders of your shirts. I have wooden hangers and I just hang them inside out. It's a little trick I learned a while back. William Burnett, Steve, you have studio money. In a roundabout way. Betty Anderson, will you be doing anything else? Not at this time, although I mentioned earlier, I put a down payment on a car today. I'm going to make the major announcement on that somewhere down the road, but there is probably a new car in my future. Antti Partinen, hello from Kuopio, Finland. If you promise to put Finnish flag behind you on the wall in your new studio, I will send you one. Well, I've already got one. Got that one right there. I got the Finnish flag. I got the Finnish license plate. Finnish flag is in my logo. But no, I appreciate that offer, but no, that's okay. Trust me. The Americans know about my Finnish connection. Tiger Stripes, I know who Jan and Dean are. And you got to remember that Jan was in a really bad car accident. And he didn't actually perform for quite some time. And then later on, the two of them got back together again and they toured. And so I saw them back in the early 80s, I'm guessing, or mid 80s, 85, 86, right on there maybe. It's been a while, but I've got photographs of most of that. Cop with Cuffs, Detroit Steel. Are you asking about whether I'd buy a foreign car? I assure you that I would not ever and have not ever owned a foreign car. And I've had people say, Steve, what would happen if someone gave you a foreign car? And that would be a dilemma. I can't turn down a gift, but I could not spend my own money on a foreign car. I just couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. I respect foreign cars. I admire foreign cars, but I grew up in Detroit in the 60s, and no. I've ridden in foreign cars, okay? But what can I tell you? Daniel Kester, is Mr. Lieberman the other guy that has a jet car and a turbine car? No, that'd be Jay Leno. Jay Leno's got the turbine car and the turbine motorcycle. Or are you referring to Mark Lieberman is also a dealer for turbine-powered motorcycles. So if you want to buy an MTT turbine-powered motorcycle that will go so fast that I guess that the number I'd probably be wrong, but it's insanely fast and cool. I've done videos on those too, but he sells those. He doesn't have a jet car though. Jay Leno's got 2 turbine-powered cars and a turbine-powered motorcycle. And the brand of motorcycle that Jay Leno has got is the brand that Mark Lieberman is in fact a dealer for. So he sells those vehicles. So Everyday Overland. Yes. Norma Hogarth, didn't he go off Dead Man's Curve? That's the urban legend variation of it. I'm not exactly sure of the details of his accident, but of course the irony was that Jan and Dean had a song called Dead Man's Curve, and then Jan got hurt very, very seriously in a car accident that had some echoes of that song in it. So Tiger Stripes, yeah, Jay's got one of everything, pretty much. Arrow 251, American cars are fine if you also purchase a 10-year warranty. Yeah, the funny thing is that I've been buying American cars my entire life, and I've not had any problems with them. And the funny thing is that people go, "Oh, Steve, you bought an Exploder. Every Explorer I've got has exceeded all expectations, and none of them required any warranty work. Like zero warranty work. So, I can't speak to everybody's experiences. Mine are merely anecdotal, but that's true. Dale Nodal, Gnodle, I'm guessing the G is silent, says all cars have foreign parts now. That's true, but I'll give you a little bit of trivia. If you go back and look at which cars have the most American parts versus foreign parts, the one car that routinely wins that contest until they stop making them was the Dodge Viper. So the Dodge Viper is about as American as you can get with an American car. Scuba Stevie 60 says, I always feel sad when I drive by the spot where James Dean had the fatal accident. Yeah, and James Dean, of course, is the other one that they often talk about in a car accident with a sports car out in California. Don C. Hey, Steve, checking in from Oregon. Late. Hey, better late than never. Remember, this is true of a marathon, and it's true of one of my shows. You're still doing better than the people who aren't here yet. And I was running a marathon, this a few years ago, and running slow. But I mean, I was going to finish, but I'm running a marathon slow. About the 23 or 24 mile mark, I'm running along, and I pass somebody, and they start running at they're running at my speed. So we're talking for a few minutes, and he made a comment about how embarrassing it is to finish that late in a marathon. And I go, dude, we beat every single person who didn't run today. And he goes, whoa, you're right. So if you show up for a live stream, it doesn't matter. You're still better off than the people who didn't. At least that's my theory. Oh, Santa, Sir, Glenn, Doctor, healed. Moving studio, how far? Well, it doesn't matter for you, because all it's going to happen is one day you're going to turn on a video and it's going to be a different background wall. But I'll have some other details to fill in as we go along. But that's the tip of the news right there. Okay. So Scott Whirling says, I was the public address announcer for the River Bandits. What's the sport? What's the town? Sounds like a minor league thing. Tiger Stripes, good perspective on marathons. It's absolutely true. It is absolutely true. And that and runners tend to be very hard on themselves because they're always thinking like personal records and I got to get a PR today. And the first marathon I ever ran was in 1988. I ran a marathon in 1988. And I'd never run one before, obviously. And so your brain goes through all kinds of thought processes and it's hard to describe what happens to your brain and your body and your mind when you've run for 26 miles. And I was running a portion of the race through an industrial part of Detroit before you get on to Belle Isle, because the finish line used to be on Belle Isle. And was running the section where there's nobody around except for a couple other runners. I was doing pretty good. I did a 3:44 that year. And I come around a corner, and there's an old guy by himself sitting on a lawn chair on an otherwise empty block. No one else around, just one old guy just sitting there on a lawn chair. And he looked at me, and I looked at him. I didn't say anything, but apparently he could see the tiredness in my eyes. And as I went by, he goes, son, it's not just anyone can run a marathon. And that actually fired me up. And I said, thank you. Thanks for coming out, And it's funny because you start thinking these things and it's an old dumb, motivational speaker kind of thing to say most people put up enough obstacles to keep them from ever accomplishing anything in their lives, let alone the obstacles other people put up. Okay. So you've got to learn to spot the obstacles in your own life. There you go. So, Fuse Man, what's the weather in Bad X? Where's Johnny? Did Johnny check out? I hope Johnny didn't leave. Todd, the Fuse Man, thank you. Down payment on a Viper. Boy, you guys are good speculating. It's all speculation, my friends. Oh boy. Vernon Turner says you can move the background wall farther away so you can have more stuff. And I just realized, I don't know why I didn't think of that. I was assuming I could move the camera further back. But yeah, that's an interesting point. I can move some of the stuff around a little bit. So I can actually move myself and the camera this way. Okay, we'll figure it out. John Muirbox's Dead Man's Curve came out in 1964, and Jan's accident was in 66. Yeah, that sounds about right. Otto Breza says, Steve in Irvine, California, the best thing about your videos is that I can listen to them and work on my 944 at the same time. I got your Turbine book signed at the Peterson. Congratulations. Oh, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. I did an event at the Peterson Museum a while back, and they brought in a bunch of automobile authors, and we talked about books, and then we did book signings there. And it's pretty cool. I met a whole bunch of really neat other authors that write about books. And then Leslie Kendall, who is the curator of the Peterson, as a way of thanking us, gave us all a tour of the vault. And the vault is the basement of the Peterson. They've got stuff down there. First of all, most museums have got too much stuff. They can't put it all on display. I think the Peterson's probably got like 10% of their cars on display. And down in the basement, they rotate through it. But down in the basement, they had some pretty mind-blowing stuff. And it was pretty cool. It was a lot of fun. So that whole event was very, very cool. So I'm glad. Yeah. When I met you, if you came by and met me at that event, I didn't have a YouTube channel yet. So it's it's a little bit of success. 133,000 subscribers right now, or 134 maybe. I'll give you the exact number. As of right now, 133,565. So, Doug Jones, car or truck? If you're asking about buying a vehicle, I'm buying a car. Currently have 2 trucks, although there's a debate about whether or not my new Explorer is a truck or not, because it's a unibody, but the older Explorer is on a frame. So, MH08, you got to give us a video tour of your current studio before you move. Oh, I don't know. It's embarrassing. I think you lose respect for me. It's too messy. Brianna CC, how long have you been on YouTube? I believe it's the best way to figure this out is to simply look at the numbering. And I'm in my 6th year right now because this is season 6. But the first year, I didn't actually put up a lot of stuff. In fact, I didn't start putting up many videos until I think the 4th year. And then the 5th year is when I started going, So, yeah, JP is pointing out the distinction is often whether it's got a frame or not. And so my 02 Ford Explorer's got a frame, and my 2019 does not. Now, I can tell you that if you go to Ford Motor Company and look at which division is responsible for the Explorer, I believe it's still Ford Truck. But that's their distinction, not the distinction of car guys like us. Steve Gunning, unibody SUVs are not trucks. Fight me. No, that's commonly believed to be the distinction. And one of the things I can tell you is that my current Ford Explorer is so quiet. It's mind-boggling compared to my earlier Explorer, because of the fact that they built it to automotive standards as opposed to truck standards. I think I've spoken to people at the car companies, and they said, yeah, everything from the tolerances and all that stuff is done differently on that one. So, Ann Code, why do you print your articles on blue paper? I've mentioned this before, that I use blue paper because if I hold up white paper, it will mess up the exposure, especially on a recording. I'm not sure if it did there or not because the encoding might change it. But blue paper, talk show hosts routinely do that. I noticed that years ago. David Letterman, among other things, he has cards or blue cards. They're not white cards. And that's why, because holding up a block of white on camera can mess with the exposures. So, Mike Garris, does the Explorer have rear drive bias? I can tell you that my current Ford Explorer is front wheel drive, but then 4-wheel drive or all-wheel drive. Or 4-wheel drive. So I mean, you can flip it, or you can tell it to automatically set itself. But it's actually front wheel drive primarily, and then it has the backs that work also. I like the older ones that were rear wheel drive, and the fronts would kick in, but so. Doug Jones, my wife says my F-150 rides better than her Escape. Well, yeah, if you go down on the ladder of cost, the lesser expensive cars, but then again, you gotta think back, like, go find yourself an early 1970s Vega and drive it. If you want to hear, rattles and body fit issues, go back and look at the bottom of the line cars built in America during that time. So they've gotten better, but they're still, Scott Whirling, I've heard that blue paper is easier to read from. I actually like reading the blue paper. It seems easier on my eyes. I don't know if that's my imagination, but I actually got that impression also, but I was doing it for the exposure of the camera. David Owens, the newest Explorer is rear-wheel drive. Are you referring, though, to the 2020? Because mine's a 2019. Sam T, true, and also has a transaxle with an auxiliary power unit instead of a transfer case with low range. Sounds about right. Oh, boy. I'll eat your bird. Hello, Steve from Moscow, Maryland. Do you say Moscow or Moscow? In Russia, it's Moscow. Michigan has a Moscow also, and it's along the US 12 route I described earlier across the bottom of the state. And I know that I've driven through a town. They got a really, really neat little train station that, the train tracks don't go through anymore, I don't think. But a little train station with a little, Moscow on it. It's pretty cool. Tom Dragos. So is my Jeep JK considered a truck? Believe it or not, I know guys who call Jeep Wranglers trucks. It's a small truck if you go by that definition. But I'll eat your bird. Haha, Moscow. Yeah, okay, good. I gotta ask. I try to get the pronunciations if I think I'm in trouble on them, and I usually am. Peter Woolworth, I had a 74 Vega wagon. Drove it until the mid-90s. Wow. They have an Iron Duke, the four-cylinder in it. The funny thing about the Iron Duke, it got a really bad reputation. Four-cylinder engine in Vegas and Monzas and a few other small cars. Because it had a cast iron block and there was something weird about the block and the head being different metals. I always forget which is which. And so if you overheated it, just all bets are off. But if you didn't overheat it, as a decent engine, and among other things, it had, I believe, timing gears instead of a timing chain or a timing belt. And so I had a couple of them in cars that lasted for a long, long time because I don't overheat my cars and I change the oil like I'm, like a religion. So I liked the Iron Duke, but I know people who did not like it at all. JP says, hey, Steve, the Jeep Wranglers are quarter-ton trucks. Yes. And it's kind of funny because I never stopped to think about that distinction. But if you get into the military vehicle world, they talk about, quarter ton, half ton, 3/4 ton, 1.5, 2.5, and of course the deuce and a half is 2.5 tons of its rating as far as the military goes. So Dixie Champagne, I want a pacer with which to pull my canned ham camper just for grits and shins. My mom had a pacer. And before we talk about how cruel that was for my family to make her drive that, she got it when she handed down the Gremlin. And I've mentioned before that the first car I got to drive to school in high school was a Gremlin, a green Gremlin with white vinyl seats and an AM radio. And just, it doesn't get any lower than that. And I know that it's a campy thing now to say, oh, I like Gremlins. They're cool. No. Go back to that time frame, 1979 or 8, and give a kid a 74 Gremlin and go, here are the keys. You're like, I can walk, I can drive. How far is it? Who's going to see me? That kind of thing. So the Gremlin got I got rid of it. I got to move on and get myself into the 69 Dodge Charger shortly thereafter. So Sam T says the aluminum block with the iron pistons, but the Vega engine wasn't the Iron Duke. In your case, maybe, but I know that I'm pretty sure the Vega was available with an Iron Duke. Because I owned a Vega briefly. I remember the engine. I wonder about the years and all that. Scott Whirling, I owned a 75 Chevy Vega and a Pontiac Aztec. Don't hate me. Dude, I don't hate you. I pity you. I assume you've moved up in your life. Tiger Stripe says, I always like the look of the Gremlin. And Mike Elf says, Gremlins will never be cool. Why don't you two fight? The Gremlin is an interesting looking car now. I admit that. It's an interesting looking car. But it was just a pile of junk. And make it green and drive it to high school. And it's just, So I know you can get a Gremlin X with a V8 in it, I think. But there was a time when you get anything in a high performance level car, So I've joked before about AMC, American Motors. American Motors gave us the Gremlin, the Pacer, the Matador, and the Javelin. And some of them in some years were okay. I liked the AMC AMX for a couple of years, but it was just something always a little bit off about their styling. So Peter Mandex had to drive the family's 1974 Toyota Corolla station wagon in metallic pea and rust. There was a kid at my school that I actually felt sorry for when I was driving the Gremlin, and his family had bought, I think it was a Pinto wagon that had wood paneling, and the body was this weird like flesh color. There was a time when you get cars in like 1,000 colors, and now you go to the dealership and you got like 4 colors or 5 colors. They go, you pick one, and there was also a time when the manufacturers just build cars and ship them, and you get these really weird paint color combinations. You're like, who, what, how, like, why would they do that? And everyone will remember between like 75 and 80, when Chrysler had a metallic green that looked like, it was like the color of like lima beans or something. It was the most ugly color. And you'd see whole lots filled with these cars because they were just cranking the cars out. I think the government was buying them at a discount or something. And you're like, who thought that's a good idea? But this kid I knew in high school was driving this Pinto wagon with fake wood paneling on the side, and the color of the body was like this weird like flesh tone. It was the weirdest thing. I remember looking at it going, like everything is wrong. I mean, I understand it's a car. It moves around, but someone had to decide to paint it that color. Someone had to decide to buy that color. Like how can this many mistakes be made in one vehicle's existence? So Doug Jones, I say an older bug with a Hemi dropped in. I wonder if you could cram it in there, because the problem is the VW does not have a lot of room back there, especially for how we're going to get the power to the wheels. I've always wondered if you couldn't take one of the Chargers in the mid 80s. Now, Mark Herman saying Iron Duke was iron head on iron block with 2.5 liters, used in X bodies like the Citation. Now, I'm not referring to the Quad 4. I know what you're talking about. The Quad 4 is the one that had a bunch of head gasket problems and also had a problem with gunking up in the oil. But what was it on the Iron Duke that was unusual? There's something about the sleeves or something, like the piston sleeves maybe, or the cylinder sleeves, or so there's something unusual about it. Other than just simply being a 2.5 liter engine. So Scott Whirling, worst car ever made, Mustang 2 from the early 70s. I will admit, when I saw the Mustang 2, I actually thought, wow, they killed that nameplate. Too bad. Mustangs are done. Mustangs made an amazing recovery, only to be turned into a 4-door SUV, and now stick a fork in it. It's done. Oh, boy. A Believer says, once you sign a contract for buying a new car, is there a legal way to back out if you feel you're being ripped off by charges the dealership added on after you sign? Well, here's a problem. This is a question of contract law. When you sign a contract, it's supposed to be complete, unless you actually signed a contract that says, by the way, I agree to let them add stuff in later. So, when you go to sign a contract, you should make sure that the bottom line number is the bottom line number and it ain't going to change at all. And I've had cases before where someone says they signed a contract and the dealership calls up and goes, hey, we made a mistake. You owe us $3,000 more. And at that point, you know, there's a bunch of different ways that can go, depending. But one way it can go is, oh, in that case, let's just undo the whole thing. So, Michael Keller says, my dad had a Mustang too. He said it was a good car, but it liked to graze. What does that mean? Boycott watch. I want a Cushman post office thing. Goes from 0 to 60 in about an hour. Will it hit 60? AMC made it into a James Bond film. Remember that, The Man with the Golden Gun. Which vehicle made it in? And was it for comic relief, or was it actually a cool vehicle? You know, one of the things about Bond movies is they often did product placement, but cool product placement. So they have a jetpack in one, you know, and they've obviously got the Aston Martins, and he's always got a cool watch. He's got a cool gun, you know, that kind of thing. And so when you hear that, like, an AMC product made it into a James Bond film, you go, wait, what? And you wonder, like, did they pay to put it there? Or did they actually say, hey, let's put this in here? So, Don C. Nobody agrees to a contract allowing them to add more later, I would hope. You'd be surprised. I've seen purchase agreements put out by car dealers in Michigan that actually say things like, if we determine that your trade-in is worth less than we thought, we have the right to, you know, and most people don't read them. And most contracts for auto purchases in Michigan are two-sided, meaning that there's stuff in the front, stuff in the back. And on the front, it says everything in the back is just as important as on the front. And if you sign on the front, you've read and understood the back. And no one has. So, hey, Johnny Knoxville's back. I feel bad for McDonald's. Fat people are allowed to blame them. Bill Burr. John Muirbach, a 455 Olds Toronado drivetrain will work in a VW, but will it fit? Because isn't that just a monstrous thing? The engine and the, you know, all that. It's got to be big. Autobrez now says the Vega block was aluminum with the plasma sprayed hard coating in the liners. And I seem to recall, and again, I could be wrong, but it had something to do with the cylinder liners and the engine block. And if you overheated it, it would cook something to a point where it was not good. So, Tom says that yeah, it's a Matador. Was that a Matador in the James Bond film? Johnny Knoxville. Danny Beaupre, my stepdad had a 69 Mercury Matador X100 with a 429 Police Interceptor engine. Very cool. Yeah, Ford had a whole bunch of the 427, 428, 429, different variations of that, of those race motors, police motors, NASCAR engines. Ford had their own, they didn't call it a Hemi, but they had their own hemispherically headed engine. And so, yeah, there was a lot of cool stuff being made by basically all the big three car makers. GM had some good engines too. Scott Whirling, Top Gear show had a prototype VW Golf with a V12 engine in it. Where'd the V12 come from? It wasn't like an Allison aircraft engine, was it? Ram 50 V8, it was a cylinder treatment that brought silicone to the surface of the wall, and Briggs and Stratton Cool Bore has the same process. Okay, I'm gonna look this up now because I'm having faint memories, but Betty Anderson, why do laws vary wildly from state to state? Why no uniformity? Well, it depends. There are some laws that are almost identical state to state. Like the Uniform Commercial Code was designed that way to allow contracts and commerce to take place between people in different states. But a long time ago, we decided that we let states set their own laws on things like crimes and divorce and real estate. And the thinking is that there might be differences from region to region on how we handle divorce or how we handle child custody or how we handle real estate transactions. And so they just let that do. And so the Constitution, 10th Amendment specifically says, or it's the Ninth Amendment. But anyways, says that, if it's not listed here, we leave it to the states. And they did that. So the Constitution and the Bill of Rights talks about how the federal government works and what its limitations are, and everything else is up to the states. So at the time, it seemed like a good idea. Larry Turley says the Gremlin wasn't so bad. My first car was a 1954 Nash Rambler. Now, see, I can't speak to that. I've seen them. I've seen a lot of cars from the 50s and 40s, and it is true that the cars in the 40s and 50s, compared to today, do look primitive, and they often ride primitively. In that, suspension technology has made leaps and bounds in progress since the 40s and 50s. And cars have gotten better materials, better fasteners, better machining technology. So I wouldn't be surprised by that. Unfortunately, my driving career began in 1978. And so for me to talk about cars, I've got to talk about cars that I've driven. And so it starts with a 74 Gremlin. Courtney Strobeck, did I miss the big announcement? Just got here. I blame work. I blame a lot of stuff on work. The big announcement is I'm moving my studio. So this is my last live stream. I will not have one this Sunday. And I will be shooting my videos in and doing my live streams from a different studio shortly. So I didn't have to announce it, but the background wall is a different color. So short of painting the wall, I figured, but I'm probably going to rearrange it a little bit. I'm going to make more sense out of the things behind me. I've got a lot of stuff like, bumper stickers and so on that aren't even on set yet just because I haven't got room. So I'm going to try to get as much of this stuff in a logical and meaningful way. So one of these days you're going to flip on the channel, hit play, and all of a sudden it's going to be a different background, and it's going to be like a mind-blowing experience. And all I need to tell you is it's going to take me about 6 or 8 hours to tear this apart, move it, and set it back up again, because I'm actually going to go through and, change stuff, clean stuff up, move stuff around. I might even dust the cars. Who knows? Coronash, yes, the 10th Amendment. Okay. Ram 50 V8, will the studio be in the same house? No. Yeah, I wouldn't tear the studio down and move it 20 feet. It's got to go further than that. Tom, but that means you'll have to drive to work instead of walking 20 feet. No, I'll have to walk about 40 feet, but I won't have to drive there. Scott Whirling, Steve, are you moving to a remote studio in Bad Axe? I wish I was moving to a remote studio in an underground studio in Bad Axe. That'd be cool. No. Scott Rensel, who took the $100? It's on the set. It's there. Mike Levy, dust the cars, just use canned air. Yeah, that's one thing I've never bought. Compressed air, just in a can. I understand they make it for like keyboards and stuff. I realize now that we do buy bottled water, but canned air just seems a little bit of a stretch, right? So, Todd, is this like work for you? You've seen me work. Tom LaVault, my first car was an 85 Mercury Topaz. You gotta love back when they just did the badge engineering, and General Motors would make one car and claim it was made by 5 different divisions, and it's just a slightly different trim level, Roger Smith, don't get me going. Mike Garrett's, maybe canned air for a camera lens. Yeah, actually, I've done that too. I'm joking, but it's just kind of funny that they've got us to the point now where we're buying canned air and bottled water. DePaul 31 points out that canned heat is useful. Yeah, and I think it's also a band. Mark Rackala says, "Isn't CO2 actually what they put in canned air?" I don't know. I'm curious. So the CO2 cartridges are used for a lot of stuff, like for inflators on bike tires and so on. Doug Jones, inline four, die-cast aluminum, alloy block with a cast iron cylinder head, open deck design with Siamese. And I seem to recall that there was something in there about a bad marriage of aluminum and iron being in there. But again, I hate it when I've got just enough of a thought to remind me that makes me think I should know better. Mike Geertz, the Cadillac Catera. That's one of them. That's one of them. Hey, let's make a really, really cheap Cadillac to bring in the people who can't afford a real Cadillac. And the people who've got real Cadillacs are going, wait, now they're selling cheap Cadillacs? That's stupid. Dave K., my first car was a 1948 Studebaker Champion. Studebaker, one of those old names in America. Yeah, JP, it zigs. Again, Cadillac has had issues, and they've been around for a long time. Cadillac was the one that had the really, really bad ad campaign. And when they got smart was when they started doing sportier ads with Led Zeppelin in the in the soundtrack. They like the opening riff to Rock and Roll would be a Cadillac ad. And I was sitting there watching television at a friend's house, and a gentleman in the room was about 20 years older than me, one generation above me, turns to me and goes, "Steve, do you know anybody at Cadillac?" And I go, "I don't know, some attorneys there. Why?" And he goes, "Tell them I hate this ad." And I looked at him and I go, "You understand they're happy about that, right?" and he thought about it and he goes, "I think you're probably right." And that's the whole point is they had to figure out a way to get the next generation to think Cadillac was cool and something that's worth investing money in. So Mark Rackala, you didn't butcher my name all that bad. A supervisor work says it that way on purpose. I'm sure close enough. I'm wondering, is Rackala Finnish? I'm assuming it's Finnish, but if it's not Finnish, I'm just pronouncing the way it looks in Finnish. Because the OLA is a common ending to Finnish words and Finnish names. And I whenever I see words that look like that, I assume they're Finnish. And once in a while, they're not. So, yeah, Felix Gilboa says, my dad's Studebaker had a push-button transmission, was considered space age. There were a few cars back then that actually had push-button transmissions, never quite caught on. I think people want to think that the transmission is more sturdy than something like a radio, which is what you think of when you think push buttons. Todd's talking about the Cimarron was another one of the Cadillac things that Mark Rackala is a Finlander. There you go. Although I should be pronouncing the H, right? Rackala. South Maryland Steve, will you have enough cowbell? I've got 2 right now, but we don't count them by how many bells you have, but by how loudly you ring them and shake them. Doug Jones of Plymouth Valiant had push-button transmissions. Yeah, several different manufacturers use the push-button transmission concept. And I've never driven a car with a push-button transmission. Danny Reed, the Slip-O-Matic. What was the transmission? It was a 2-speed. I think Pontiac made it. We used to call it a slush box. 2-speed transmission. There were some bad ones. Remember that General Motors had like 78% market share at one point. And they could put out anything and people would buy it. So is it Ra or Ra on the last name, Mark? I'm curious because it looks like Rackala, but I'm assuming it's Rackala, or would that be with an umlaut? Doug Jones, we need more cowbell. Yes, you can never have enough cowbell because Bruce, the producer. Yes. Oh, that's great. Dean Pratt, the Power Glide. Bruce Napier, Power Glide. And Donnie D, Power Glide. I like it when I get the good answer. It's like crowdsourcing the truth. The Fuse Man has to learn up on heart murmurs. I found out I got one. Oh, that's not good. I mean, obviously they caught it and you're still typing, so that's a good sign. Hopefully they can figure out what it is, and if it's a problem, fix it. You always hate to hear about the diagnosis afterwards. You know, you're at the funeral and they say, "Oh yeah, here's what got him." It's like, wow, too bad he didn't know about that. So you're on the correct side of this right now. Johnny Knoxville, I'm looking at a webcam of Frankenmuth High School's weather. Frankenmuth. I've mentioned briefly, I worked in Frankenmuth briefly at a radio station there. There's no radio station there now anymore, but there was. And when I worked there, I liked getting local stuff, and they had local high school stuff, and it said Muth, M-U-T-H on it. And I was actually I've probably told this story before. I was in a bar in New York City years ago, and I was wearing something that said Muth on it. And a guy goes, "Hey, Frankenmuth." So, oh boy. David Swan, the 52 Dodge had a Gyromatic. Gyromatic. It's a great name. See, you have to remember there's certain words that became hip. And so like satellites were cool, right? And gyroscopes were cool. And then turbo became cool, right? And so every couple of years, and then everything became E or I, you know, I this, I that, iPad, iPhone, E this, E that, and tech. And, you know, but Gyromatic. Talent Trading, Power Glide 2-speed in my old Camaro. Wow. Yeah, it's kind of funny. I've seen some stuff on those old Camaros. You forget that the early ones were the smaller ones. And some of them were actually put out with smaller engines. And the thinking was that it's a small car, it doesn't need a big engine. It'll be more nimble and sporty and almost like a road car as opposed to a race car, straight line. So Doug Edwards, Frankenmuth Radio, Christmas songs all year long. They probably could have done that and gotten away with it. It was an oldies station, though. But Doug's pointing out that in Frankenmuth, there's a place called Bronner's. And Bronner's is a Christmas store. It's a store. It's a superstore, so it's nothing but Christmas stuff. If you like Christmas, go to Bronner's. It's in Frankenmuth, and it's on the south end of town. It's huge, gigantic. And it's open, as they say, 364 days a year. The only day they're not open is Christmas. And you'll see billboards for them, and you'll see ads for them all across the state. I know people from other states who make the trip to Bronner's because they want to buy Christmas stuff. And I mean, middle of summer, the store's packed. It's packed. It's one of those examples of somebody who thought up an idea that was just unusual enough to where if they did it big enough, people would come from all over to shop there. And so Franklin's a really cool town, but everyone who goes there always makes a point to stop at Bronner's and check out the Christmas stuff in July. Song Yardbird, a book, People Wrongly Convicted by Junk Science. I've actually read a couple books on junk science, and I'm wondering, I bet there have been books written on that. I'll have to take a look at that. Junk science is fascinating. There's a book, it's right over there, I kid you not, just trust me, called Galileo's Revenge. And it's all about junk science in the courtrooms. And there was a time, for instance, when in America, if you got punched or hit or in a car accident and when they went to work on you, they found cancer, you could sue and say that you got traumatic cancer, that the car accident caused my cancer, or that the trauma to my body caused the cancer. And there was a period of time for decades where that was a sound legal theory because it's considered a sound medical theory. And then later on, doctors, they haven't cured cancer, but they've figured out some of the things that do cause it or trigger it or make it worse. And they discovered that car accidents don't cause cancer. And so they've finally gotten away with that. But there was a period of time, and that was just junk science that was accepted in the courtroom for decades. So Doug Jones, the Chevy Rock Crusher 4-speed. I've often heard more often the Muncie Rock Crusher. And the Muncie Rock Crusher 4-speed was a manual transmission, a 4-speed, built by a company called Muncie. And the gears were beveled in such a way. It was considered like a heavy-duty transmission, but they were beveled in such a way that they made a grinding noise that was considered normal for that transmission. But people who were unfamiliar with it would hear it and go, like, what's that? And it was just, that's how it is. Just calm down, people. That's a perfectly normal sound for this transmission to be making. So unfortunately, I've got to run right now because I got to go take care of some stuff over at the new studio. But once again, if you missed the announcement at the top or any of the 20 other times I mentioned it, I am moving this studio to another location. This is my last live stream here for a few days. I cannot do it on Sunday. Early next week, I'll do one from the new location, but I'll start shooting videos there probably tomorrow. So in a day or two, you're going to see a new background behind me, and it's all going to happen. So brand new studio coming up soon. Like I said, also, I did put a down payment on a car. That's all I'm going to say right now. But when I get that car, trust me, there'll be videos on that as well. So until then, please stay safe. Take care of yourself. And if you're in Wisconsin, do what you got to do, but do it safely. And until then, please behave yourselves. I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.